You're listening to the Cryptic Crew podcast. I'm your host, Mark Childers. Before we get started, if you've had an encounter or an experience or just something unexplained, click on our link tree in the description and share your encounter. Thank you for listening to the Cryptic Crew podcast.
The scream went for 3-4 seconds, and I know that when you're out in the woods, if you encounter a predator or anything, the last thing that you want to do is run.
You knew you weren't alone. Something was there, and I can't explain that.
I've never in my life heard anything like what I heard that night.
On this episode of the Cryptic Crew podcast, I'm super excited to introduce host and creator of Rebel's Dark Tales of Appalachia, Bigfoot researcher and team member of Sasquatch Recon and NCI, Jerry Millwood. Jerry, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, and I've been very excited about this.
Well, I appreciate it, and I've been looking forward to this episode as well. I tell you what, let's just dive right in, if you don't mind, and tell the listeners and myself what got you interested in the world of Bigfoot and the unexplained.
Okay. Chronologically, when I was about 5 years old, something happened to me over a period of time where I would see this dark figure in my room, and I would scream. My parents would come and get me, and that went on for a period of time. I don't know how long, and then it stopped. As horrifying as that was, that ignited an interest in the paranormal, in ghosts and things like that. And when I went to the book fair at school, I looked for the ghost books. And then I was seven years old. My grandfather took me to see the movie The Legend of Boggy Creek. Like so many other researchers and investigators, a lot of my peers, that movie ignited the first spark. And it certainly did so with me. Now, it was an interest from an entertainment standpoint. You know, like a kid believes in Superman. Well, I was a kid that played in the woods all the time, and I thought it was cool to think that there might be these big monsters living out in the woods. But as I got older, it went into the background, as things from your childhood do. We'll fast forward to 2013 when I moved to my current location. And I was in heaven when we came here because I am surrounded by wilderness. I have the South Mountains mountain range is my front yard. That's 100,000 acres of mountains, plus the extraneous wilderness in the periphery of the South Mountains. And I started finding trees that were broke over, give or take around the 6-foot mark, about a little higher than eye level. And I saw a lot of that. From time to time, I heard some things that I really couldn't identify as wildlife, as known wildlife, and being a camper and hiker and serving a lot of time in the military. And at Fort Bragg, I spent a lot of time in western North Carolina. We did military exercises here. I couldn't identify a lot of the sounds. So I emailed a fellow, you probably have heard of him, by the name of Lyle Blackburn. At one point, he's written a number of books. And I said, tell me about these tree breaks, because that was, you know, I had read a thing or two in several books about that, and I got the opportunity to correspond with him. And we began to hear more of the vocalizations as time went on, especially starting about 2015. Then in 2017, August of 2017, my wife and I were turning onto a dead-end road one night. And to our left, as we turned on the road, was a field of corn, full-grown mature corn. And there, standing between the road and the corn, not 25, 30 feet from us, was a big, humongous, bulky, tall, hairy thing standing there. It took a second to register with me. I got the car stopped, and Nancy was keeping her eye on it, and I said, I'm going to back up the car, and I wanted to back up and put the headlights on the cornfield. But before I quite got there, it stepped into the corn, but I got the headlights position, and I was able to see it above the corn. It was at least 7 feet tall, and I could see its head above the corn, and I could see the corn in the light kind of on each side of it, kind of bending over slightly, but it didn't walk through the corn in such a manner that it bulldozed the corn and bent stalks over. I guess it just very carefully weaved its way through, and that ignited something in me that I never knew that I could be this so much in pursuit of something as I became when that happened. In December 2019, I, along with one of my other family members, had the opportunity to see another one, which just ignited the fires all the much more. I joined Sasquatch Recon. At the time, it was known as Dirty Sasquatching with Dwight Campbell and Bob Trent and Tim Deals, and they took me under their wing, and they started teaching me. Later on, a fellow named Chris Collins joined. But then last year, I had the opportunity to make a guest appearance on the NCI show, which is on Channel 12 TV network. And that night, after the episode was over in the green room, they asked me if I would like to join NCI. So I got in with George Lunsford, Rob Effler, and Tim Deals is also in that group, and Randy Stewart out west. So between the two groups and a lot of ground time, I've been able to learn a lot. I've been on a lot of investigations. Sometimes I can't go on investigations with either one of my crews because we're spread out. So I may get one of my friends here that I trust, and we may go on a 2-man nighttime investigation. As a matter of fact, we did that not this past Saturday, but Saturday before at an area where the owners of the property asked me to come in and check it out. And I haven't talked about that on air with anybody yet.
Okay. Can you tell us what happened?
I absolutely can.
Okay. Yeah, we'd love to hear it.
Now, I do know these folks. They weren't complete strangers. Very reliable, trustworthy people. And they live backed up to the South Mountains, and they live right on the First Broad River. And over the years, they've had some experiences. She's managed to get some pictures of tracks, and they've heard a lot of vocalizations. But lately, none of the wildlife are coming up to eat from the feeders. They feed everything in the wilderness. They leave corn for the deer, seeds for the birds. They leave foods for the squirrels, the raccoons, the skunks, and everything stopped coming. Prior to that, they had to reload the feeders every day. And as of last night, they haven't reloaded the feeders in 2 weeks. So I went over for a daytime walk of the property, found 2 partial tracks. One of them was a very, very good heel print that was sunk massively into that sand. I'm going to estimate a little more than 500 pounds. It's hard to find full tracks in the Appalachian foothills and mountains. You got to get lucky. You got to find it on a sandbar or a wet area because we have so much leaf litter. But I found those 2 partials, and I told them that I would come back. That was on a Thursday. I told them I would come back that Saturday. Well, that night, they had more experiences. There were wood knocks directly behind their house. There was some vocalizations, and the lady of the house made a whooping sound, and she got a tremendous response. Their dogs were terrified. They have full-grown German Shepherds. So that, not this Saturday, but the previous Saturday, myself and my friend Todd Landers went out, and we went in during daytime very quietly and found us a good spot for an observation point, listening point on high ground overlooking we commanded a good view both from a visual sense and an auditory sense of the property. We just sat there and let it get dark. We heard a whoop at about 7:45, and then we heard a tree knock. And then one of the strange phenomena that we see here in this area are unexplained lights. Sometimes they're orange lights kind of on the ground. We call those jack-o'-lantern lights. Sometimes there's these, most of the time it's a white light, but sometimes they're colored. And they're more up in the tree level. And then we have orange lights, white lights in the sky. Well, we saw in the trees for about 5 minutes these strange white lights. We made that observation. And suddenly I got to hear something that I've never heard before. I've read about it. I've heard people describe experiences where they heard it. But down by the river, we could hear rock clacking. Now, by then, it was 10 o'clock or so, very dark night. And it went on for 10 minutes, and it was coming from 3 different locations on that river. It's a wilderness area, and we commanded such a good view that had someone been down there, we'd have been able to see their headlights or their flashlights. So I'm pretty much going to outright say we eliminated the possibility of hoaxers, unless they were all wearing night vision goggles, and I highly doubt that. So my partner Todd made a vocalization. He made a loud whooping howl, and it quit. We went the rest of the night without hearing a peep. Not a rock clack, not a wood knot, nothing. So we packed it in and left. I think we left about 1 a.m. And then the next night, my witnesses got a picture. The woods come right up to their backyard. Very, very heavily wooded area. And they were able to get a picture of the clear silhouette of a Sasquatch. There's no doubt in my mind. I sent it to, all the people in my inner circle, and everybody but one agreed, yeah, that has to be a booger, as we call it here in North Carolina.
Right.
One person suggested, well, maybe the head, and I'll send you the picture. I'd like for you to see it. But one person suggested that the head didn't look quite big enough, but then somebody enhanced it and was able to determine that it had its head turned at such an angle that it appeared smaller than it was. Very creepy picture. And they are still having, every night since then, they've had the howls and the whoops and the wood knocks. They haven't heard the rock clacking themselves. So when I come back from my trip in first weekend of October, I'm going to get my partner and we're going to go back over there and do an all-nighter.
Yeah, it sounds like that area is extremely active right now. And if you heard, I'm assuming, so you heard 3 rock clack.
We heard multiple. We heard 10 minutes worth of rock clacking from 3 different locations. And sometimes they would be very staccato-like. Sometimes you would hear one rock clack, maybe 10 seconds go by, you would hear another, and then another. And yes, they were relatively close together. I'm going to say they were all within 100 yards of each other.
Did you hear any other activity, any wood knocks or other vocalizations of any kind?
Not after the rock clacking. Now, prior to that, we had heard a very distinctive whoop, the classic whoop. We had heard a tree knock, and then there was the lights, and then the rock clacking. And my friend Todd does a very impressive Bigfoot howl. And I was thinking, well, he just shut them down. Maybe they thought he was a big alpha or something. It would be somebody they didn't know, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that sounds like exactly what it could have been. Once he made that call or made that whoop sound, that it shut them down.
We lit the area when we knew that we were going to be leaving. We made that decision. We both had we got these tremendously powerful spotlights, and we just lit it up all of a sudden and started looking. And we didn't have any luck there, seeing anything or hearing anything else after he did the whoop. But I have no doubt when we go back next time, we'll do the same thing, slip in real quietly, set up camp, probably around the same spot, and just remain silent, turn on our recorders and our camera and everything. This whole area, the South Mountains in general, is a hot spot. I live on a hot spot. And there are many hot spots within the overall hot spot of the South Mountains of North Carolina.
Right. Yeah, I had looked up earlier the acreage of the amount of national forest in North Carolina, and just that alone, it was over 1 million acres.
Yes.
And this is so, I tell you what, if you can, for people that have not been to that area, can you kind of describe where you live and what the terrain's like?
Sure. We are considered the foothills. The South Mountains are kind of unique because though we're in the foothills, it is nevertheless a large mountain chain. It runs east-west, west-east. It's about 100,000 acres. And the surrounding terrain, and I live 5 miles south of the South Mountain State Park boundary. It's steep, it's rugged. We got a lot of deep creek bottoms, deep river bottoms, typical Appalachian forest, hardwood forest, and we have a whole lot of contiguous wilderness. I'm in the northwest corner of Cleveland County, North Carolina, but the South Mountains touch Cleveland County, Burke County, Rutherford County, and McDowell County out in the extreme western end.
Two things I was going to ask you about. One, when you plan an investigation or you guys plan on going somewhere, do you typically go stealth mode or do you act natural like you're, just anybody else going out in the woods camping?
Generally speaking, when we go out as groups, we don't go into stealth mode. I do more daytime with NCI. We go deeper into the big mountains of North Carolina, on up toward Tennessee, but we just stroll right in. And there's several places that our guy up there, Tim Deals, he knows them like the back of his hand, and we just stroll right in. We don't make any attempt to be stealthy or hide. We've got game cameras and recorders everywhere. Same thing with NCI, and those guys do a lot in the URI National Forest, and I don't get to go out with them a lot, but Sasquatch Recon does a lot in the URIs, and I don't get to go there a lot with them because that's a good drive for me. But they come here a lot. They come here to where I live, and we go down into the woods basically south of my property and set up, and they come in with we have a spot. They pull a pop-up camper, and they have massively awesome equipment. So not really stealth mode there either. Generally, if I go stealth mode, it's when I go out by myself or with one of my other guys.
Right. Yeah. Going back to the picture that you had mentioned the witness had. Now, was that a nighttime picture or daytime?
It was an evening picture, getting close to sundown. Had that been a daylight picture, it would have been even more incredible because you would have been able to see detail. That's how close it was.
That's amazing. How close do you think it was to the camera that was set up?
60 feet.
Okay, so it was fairly close then.
She took the picture with her phone.
Oh, she took it with her phone.
Yes.
Oh wow. That's impressive. Yeah. I would definitely go back if I was you. The next opportunity you had, if the, it sounds like there's a lot of activity going on there right now, and to get that close too,
Yeah, that when we was hearing the rock clacking, that's not as close as I've ever been to source of a vocalization or a tree knock, but it was pretty dang close. And the fact that we believe that it was 3 individuals doing it was pretty impressive too. And I can't wait to get back into that area.
Right. What do you think the rock clacks mean? It's got to be a form of communication, but what do you think it might be?
I think it could be a form of communication. And I also think that it's a possibility that it's a form of entertainment. Like, me and some of my buddies from around here may get together to play some music. Maybe they get together to play the drums, except they use rocks. It's kind of like, that was kind of the impression that I got the way that they were doing it, because clearly they were so close together. Maybe they were just having fun. I don't know. I would like to know about the rock clacking. I've not read a lot about it, but I would like to talk to someone who knows something about that. Well, not only have I never heard it myself, in this area of the South Mountains, I've interviewed just a whole boatload of witnesses, and I've never had anybody report that on the rock clacking around here.
Do you think it's mistaken for a wood knock, or do you think they're separate?
No, I don't think it's mistaken. I've heard people say, well, it's all rock clacking. I've even heard the theory that it's not wood knocking or rock clacking, that they're able to make a popping noise with their mouth, and I don't agree with that, and I don't agree. I believe that wood knocks and rock clacking are definitely 2 distinctively different things, because when you've heard a wood knock and then you hear 2 rocks being smacked together, it is night and day difference.
For the listeners, that we met at the Western North Carolina Bigfoot Festival just a couple of months ago in Marion, and I let you listen to a recording that was on our family land. Do you remember that recording?
I do. That was very impressive.
Yes, and that about 15, maybe 17 seconds in to that recording is a wood knock. And that's what it sounded like to me. I say rock clack sometimes because I don't know, of course, but that to me sounds like, or sounded like almost like a baseball bat hitting a solid oak tree,
Right. Yeah.
And I think I could tell the difference. I think I could tell the difference between that and a rock clack, but I was just going to get your opinion about that. But yeah, that recording, we haven't had anything else recently in the area, but that was pretty impressive what he had. Jerry, what do you think a Sasquatch is, or Bigfoot? Yeah, there's various camps, so I just want to get your opinion.
One time, I was totally flesh and blood animal, or a biological being, whether we call it an animal or some type of human. I was all about flesh and blood, but there's been so many things, so much water under the bridge since then. The whole phenomenon at Skinwalker Ranch out in Utah, I read several books about that, watched a series. That's got me thinking that I don't think I was right to be so firmly in the camp of flesh and blood. And there's the biblical account of the Nephilim, which honestly, all the theories right now, I think one is as good as the other.
Right. Yeah. I was in the flesh and blood camp 100% for a long time. And it seemed like the more you hear from other people and the accounts that they have where it's there, then it's gone, or there's tracks and the tracks totally disappear, something's different about that, no doubt.
Exactly. It was the testimony of two of the scientists that worked for Mr. Bigelow that owned Skinwalker Ranch before the current fella. And, they set up and then did intensive scientific surveys of the area with observation. And those two team members reported seeing a portal open, and they saw basically what they described as a Bigfoot step out. It closed behind it, and it turned and it walked out across the field heading to the woods. And then one of the other, I can't remember, I think he was an ex-military guy that was security on the property, found several sets of track, like you mentioned, that just stopped in the snow.
Yeah, it's hard to fake that. That's just, where's the prints go? And then if you did fake that, where were the prints from the person that faked it,
Right. It would be extremely difficult to pull that off. You would almost have to have a helicopter or something.
Right. Right. What is one thing that sticks out to you out of all the investigations you've ever been on or experiences you had? What would that be?
I guess I'll give you a two-part answer. In terms of personal experiences, every night, I own alpacas and goats, and every night of the year, as long as I'm not on a trip, late at night, I go to check on them, make sure everybody's okay. I spotlight the wood line below the pasture. If there's somebody missing, I have to go looking for it, which means going down the steep hill next to the woods. 3 different times things have happened where my interest wasn't just piqued. I was afraid. I was spotlighting the woods looking for a lost alpaca and caught a set of the red eyes, and had never had that happen before. I've always saw the green eye shine from the ones that I've seen hiding deep in the woods, but it was red. I don't know, there was something sinister about it. I had a bad feeling, and then I was whistled at late one night, and that also was very sinister. And then another night I was yelled at, and it was very, very close. It was no more than 30 yards from me. I was at the bottom of my pasture. It was in the woods. And that night, as the other two experiences, I felt threatened. Had this horrible feeling, and I just turned around and I got back up the hills as quick as possible. And because of the way I felt, those stand out to me. Now, the thing that I do that I love doing, the thing I love the most is interviewing witnesses. And I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of people over the past 4 years or so. A couple of the stories stand out. The one that stands out the most to me, the family that went camping in a creek bottom, very near here. and they were aware of the reputation of the property. These are friends of mine, and they brought their kids. They had 2 young kids. They had 2 older kids. And that night, the creatures came in extremely close after dark, and they could hear them chattering in the strange language. I guess we can label it a language. My witnesses said it sounded like they were talking, but it didn't sound like any known language they had heard. It just did not sound like a human language. One of them sounded very angry, and then after they stopped communicating, or when the gibberish stopped, they were surrounded on 3 sides. And so in the dark, they packed up and got out. Knowing them so well and seeing their reaction, and the fact that the father of the family, one of my best friends, very accomplished outdoorsman, packed his family up in the middle of the night and drove out of those woods in his truck. And he said they were terrified.
There's no doubt. If that's what it was, Sasquatch, that they did what they apparently wanted to do is get them off of their territory, or out of their territory.
I agree with you.
By intimidation,
And I think the sound of the kids playing that day, because they got here early, and the 2 younger kids were doing what kids do. And I mean, I was up here in my yard and I could hear them play. I think that drew the creatures in.
Right. Yeah. I agree with you there. I think sometimes if, camping or hiking or whatever, being just normal, natural, doing natural things, I think it brings up, it makes them curious. And there's no doubt in my mind they're curious creatures.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. What would you tell a skeptic?
Well, I've had a lot of conversations with skeptics, and I have covered skepticism a number of times on my shows. I tell them that they need to get out here in the woods with us. And it's one of the typical responses is, well, I deer hunt. I've never saw anything. I said, what do you go out 6 or 7 times a year? So we go into the woods, into the deep woods. We stay all night, and we live in an area. I said, you come here and deer hunt. Come deer hunt my property. And that's always, and I mean it. I tell them, if you want to come camp here close, or you want to go into the South Mountains, you just let me know. I've never had any of them take me up on it. But I don't like the closed-mindedness. I think that it's so ignorant, and I don't mean that in an insulting way, but ignorant to keep your mind trapped in the box of, okay, here's the acceptable explanations. I've had I have went a round or 2 with some skeptics who pushed some of the wrong buttons.
Right. Well, you know what you've experienced, and what you hear from other people, and you can also tell when somebody's, not embellishing or not, telling a lie, that it's organic and it's something that actually happened to them by their emotions and by looking at them. And so there's something there, no doubt. I have not experienced one myself personally, had any kind of encounter, with what I think was a Bigfoot, but from what I've heard from other people and seeing their body language and listening to them talk, I'm a 100% believer.
And despite the fact that I had my own encounters, you see, I had retired from the North Carolina judicial system, and then I went to work this part-time little country store here in the area. And Fox called the lady that owns the store, because we don't have a city hall in Kaiser. The town of Kaiser is just a little bitty tiny place. And they said, can we use your store as headquarters for this documentary called Monsters Across America? And then they asked her, do you know anybody we could interview? And she said, well, the guy that works for me she was close enough to me at the time to know that I was into it and was out in the woods a lot and all. So she asked me, I talked to the producer. I said, I'll do it. I hadn't come public with everything yet. I was still in that phase where it was very standoffish. So I asked them to silhouette me and disguise my voice. They came, filmed the episode, and then the episode aired in January of 21, and they didn't disguise my voice. So all it took was a few people in this area seeing it, and they recognized my voice, and then word got out, said, hey, that guy that works at the store, Jerry, he was on a documentary. And at first I thought it was going to attract, some negativity, and it didn't. Not one person. And then the craziest thing happened. People started coming and telling me their stories. And it just didn't stop. People bringing me pictures and recordings. And that's when I fell in love with hearing people's accounts. And of course, there's some people that came, shoot me a line of bull. I worked 23 years in the court system. I was in the military for a while. So I was able to weed out the ones who I knew obviously were just spinning a yarn. And I don't hold that against them. I don't know why. I guess that entertained them, but they got excluded. But to hear these stories of what happened to these folks, and a lot of the folks that I knew, and I would have never guessed that they were carrying around a secret like that, but it just reiterated to me, and it makes you feel better as a witness to be able to talk to other witnesses. When me and my wife had that encounter, we didn't really tell anybody outside of a couple family members. And I don't know, I wanted to tell somebody. You want to be verified, if that's a good way of saying it. And I became even more of a believer after hearing so many accounts of what folks has witnessed in this area. And then once I started my show on TikTok, things poured in and people were sending me messages, and, from there it went nuts. And so I've talked to people. I'm basically going to wind up expanding it from just the South Mountains area to the Appalachians and even beyond. I've done some things with the coastal Carolinas. We have a lot of swamps. And I love hearing people's experiences, and I want to make them feel validated and want to make them understand that they're part of a big group of people who has had these experiences. It just solidified me what I already knew.
Sure. Yeah. It's, people just hold on to it. Like you said, you validate what experience they had or reassure them. But the people that hold on to it, just afraid of ridicule. That's the main thing.
If everyone in this area were to come forward with their experiences, gosh, it would be, I know that it would be in the hundreds. But people are, I've had witnesses come and say, I want to tell you about what happened to me. And I say, okay, we'll make a date to meet or talk on the phone, and then they get cold feet. But it's all about, they're afraid of ridicule. Although every witness, I guarantee them anonymity. And by now, if they're watching my show, they know that I mean it when I say I'll protect your identity. But still yet, folks aren't coming forward in the majority. I think the minority of experiencers have come forward.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yep. Yeah, that's, it's become, and talking about shows, longer than a decade ago, I guess Finding Bigfoot would be considered one of the shows that brought that topic to the public. You had monsters and mysteries on the Destination Channel, and I think Monster Quest was one of my favorites back in the early 2000s. But, that probably, 10 years later, you had Finding Bigfoot brought that to the public and brought the topic out. And I think it may have made it more commercialized, I guess, somewhat, but it brought attention to it nonetheless. Whatever you thought about the show, liked it or not. Now, did you have any particular shows you watched or liked or followed?
I loved Monster Quest. That was my show. I absolutely loved Monster Quest. I didn't really watch Finding Bigfoot a lot. I don't know if it just didn't fit in my schedule, but I would always DVR Monster Quest.
Yeah, very good show. Well, Jerry, at the end of each show, I do a rapid fire Q&A. I'll give you 3 questions. It's just the first thing that comes to your mind. Nothing serious. So it's kind of a casual thing. So you ready?
Ready.
All right, here we go. If you had one place anywhere you could go squatching, where would it be?
South Mountains of North Carolina.
Mountains. Okay. So you're right there at your, at where you want to be then, no doubt. Yeah. I didn't know if you'd want to go Pacific Northwest or north towards the West Virginia or.
Oh, there's a lot of places that I do want to go, and we're going to get to go in between the lakes in November. But if they say you can only squatch in one place, the South Mountains of North Carolina.
Mountain. Gotcha. Good answer. All right. Favorite other name for Bigfoot? I did a poll on this yesterday, I believe, on TikTok and got some pretty cool responses. What's yours?
Our local name for it, which is Nobby.
Nobby. Okay. Yeah, I think Wood Booger was one of them I had on there. Hairy Man, Grass Man, Forest Giant, Tree Peaker. But I think one of my favorites is Ridge Walker.
Yeah.
And I did not hear that until the festival in Marion. I had a witness, someone come up and tell me their story, and that's what he called it, a Ridge Walker. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I love that name.
Yeah. Last one. Favorite college football team?
South Carolina Gamecocks.
So you're a Gamecock fan, huh?
My great-grandfather was a Gamecock fan. If you didn't like the Gamecocks, you were out of the family.
Out of the family. So that sounds like Auburn, Alabama.
You see that?
Oh my! Hey, I see it. 100% Gamecock. It is tattooed to you. Yes,
tattooed, all flared up Gamecock.
And that's what do you think about Coach Beamer?
I think he's doing a great job. They still have some issues with drawing some of the best recruits to South Carolina. I believe that he's getting it there. He's got the football mind. He's got a good group of coaches. And they're just a couple of really good star players away from contending in the Southeast Conference.
Yeah. Yes. And I'm assuming now, is Clemson the rival?
Clemson is the hated rival.
And I'm assuming y'all are liking the season they're having so far.
Yeah, we can't take a whole lot of joy in it though, because we lost to Vanderbilt. So we can't really get in their faces a whole lot because they got ammo to come back on us. Right.
Well, I think Vanderbilt, they were undefeated, I believe, or they may not be after this past Saturday. I'm not sure, but they were. I think they were undefeated.
I kind of went into depression and I stayed away from the college football internet.
Yeah, that can draw you in, no doubt. You can go down a rabbit hole. Well, Jerry, tell the listeners where they can find you on social media and what you got coming up.
Okay. You can get me on YouTube at Rebels Dark Tales of Appalachia. And you can get me on TikTok is J.R. Millwood, Millwood. Facebook, Jerry Millwood Jr. And I'm on Channel 12 TV Network, which is a streaming service on, standard streaming service on Roku and Chromecast and all that. And also on the YouTube channel for Sasquatch Recon. Coming up, the biggest thing we have coming up is the South Carolina Bigfoot Conference, Westminster, South Carolina on October 11th. And then the big one, the first week of November, we're headed to Kentucky to do some dogmen investigating.
That sounds like that would be a blast.
I can't wait.
That area you mentioned earlier, land between the lakes, is that right?
It is.
There's a lot of history and a lot of activity there. Yes, that'll be awesome. You're going to have to let me know how that goes.
Absolutely.
Keep up. And also, stay in touch with me and let me know how the second investigation goes at the witness that you had here just recently, too.
I'll keep you apprised of it. And if you want to do another show, you just let me know.
Sounds good. I really appreciate you taking your time out and coming on the show, Jerry.
Well, I appreciate you asking me. I enjoyed meeting you. I felt like we were kindred spirits. And so you got a friend in the South Mountains of North Carolina.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I feel the same way. Thank you very much. And for the listeners, if you've had an encounter, something strange, click on our link tree and share your encounter. Please like, share, and subscribe. It helps the channel out. Thank you for listening, and God bless.